Extraterrestrials visited definitive our planet. I don't know, was it 5,000, 6,000 or 10,000 years ago, or even longer, I have no idea. But we know that they were here because our ancestors have written about it. And our ancestors at that time were not science fiction writers. The ones who could write wrote the truth, the correct, the honest thing. And they did not tell us fairy tales what happened. And they clearly say we were visited by these guardians of the sky or watchmen of the sky. And in many of the old texts, they never use the word God. They always say the highest, not God. God is something different. One of the absolute most sensational reports we have in antiquity is the book of Enoch. Who is that Enoch? Enoch in the Bible is mentioned very shortly, just with two phrases. They said Enoch was the first one who disappeared with his body from this planet Earth. And Enoch was the seventh patriarch, so the seventh after Adam. And that's all what you read in the Bible, no more. But 230 years ago in the past, a British explorer came to Ethiopia. He was looking for God. He was seeking for the truth, God. And he ended in a convent in Ethiopia. And this British explorer stood there in the convent for 30 years in Ethiopia. He learned the Coptic language, he learned the Coptic writing. And in the library of this convent, he found a book with the title, The Book of Enoch. Now he knew the name Enoch from the Bible, but now a Book of Enoch. He could read it. And to his astonishment, the Book of Enoch was written, handed down in the first person, in the I form. I did, I saw, I watched, I moved, etc. Now Enoch tells an incredible story what happened to him. He says, I was 12 years old and the whole village wanted to go to sleep. Then they saw a light in the firmament. And then they saw this light is coming down. And then they hear the terrible noise. And all the villagers ran away, they were afraid. Just Enoch, he says, I stand there, bravely, strong. Then the noise disappeared and two strange beings came close to Enoch. And Enoch clearly say, they were not humans. They did not breathe like humans. If they did not breathe like humans, so what are they? If not humans, must be non-humans. And Enoch now is afraid also, and he falls down on his ground, feet and his knees, with respect to the two strangers. One of the strangers speaks to Enoch and says, don't be afraid, human. Don't be afraid. We won't hurt you. Now the first question from the critic comes, why do extraterrestrials speak the language of Enoch? How is this possible? Thousands of years ago, I repeat myself, they came down. They behaved themselves like ethnologists would do. They observed a few of our groups. They learned the language. And the language was never a problem. Simply remember our ethnologists today. They go to the upper Amazon River or somewhere to the upper Nile, and they came together with Stone Age culture, which still exists today up there. It takes a few months, and then the ethnologists of today speak the language of the natives. The language was never a problem. So, of course, to me it's not a surprise if extraterrestrial ethnologists observe a group and the one speaks to Enoch and says, don't be afraid, human, we won't hurt you. They bring him up slowly over the earth. In the book of Enoch again, the word God is not used. I know English and German translations where they always say God. In the original, God is never used. They always speak about the highest or a stranger, but not God. The translations are wrong. Why are the translations wrong? Because our ancestors had no other ideas. They had no possibility. They believed it must be God. And Enoch was taken into the heavens. He was not taken into the heavens. He was taken into space. Up there, he sees gigantic buildings. He used the word buildings. He has no word for spaceship. They came close to it. Doors open and doors close automatically. Enoch passes different gardens with vegetables and fruits and colors which he had never seen on earth. And then he came into a big hall. In the center of the hall was a throne. A throne is a chair. and on the throne was sitting the highest majesty. Now these three, two strangers and Enoch, came close to the throne, and the highest stands up from the throne, makes a few steps through Enoch, and welcomes him at the place. Now, all what I just told is really part of the book of Enoch. Now, the book of Enoch is part of the apocryphic text. I don't know an English version, but in German it looks like this. The teachers up there teach Enoch in their language. He finally speaks their language. They teach him in astronomy, in every detail. They teach him in engineering. In astronomy, one of the strangers says to young Enoch, "Human, look out there. Do you see this little light out there? You humans call it the moon, but the moon has no light by itself. The moon receives its light from the sun." And then he explains to Enoch why the moon sometimes is full and half empty, etc. This is scientific knowledge. This is not fantasy. You know, we are still speaking about Stone Age people. They could not know, the Stone Age people, that the moon receives his light from the sun. They were thinking the moon has its own light. No, this was scientific teaching. And yes, only with this phrase, you can prove that it must have been extraterrestrials. Remember, look out there, human. Do you see this little light? You humans, you call it moon. But the moon has no light by itself. The moon receives its light from the sun. And then he explains him how the changing of the moon takes place. All this is in the book of Enoch. Enoch is the only one who gives even the names of the extraterrestrials. And these are the names. So I ask my skeptics and my critics, what do you want more? And Ezekiel describes in every detail the vehicle which stands behind him. Read it in the Bible. He describes the wings, who made a terrible noise. He describes the legs. He clearly said the legs were out of metal. I took a few pictures out of an old Bible, more than 200 years old, just 5 pictures to give you an imagination what our forefathers had in mind when they read Ezekiel. Then I will show you and tell you the modern explanation, the modern reconstruction of everything. So again, Ezekiel sees this vehicle. He says, upper it, there was something like a littering, a glightening, and in the center of it was a throne. A throne is a seat. And on this throne was someone sitting, looking like a human in glittering clothes. Looking like a human? Are extraterrestrials like us? Do they look like we? Should extraterrestrials not be completely different to us? Growing up from another planet in different forms? Yes and no. The first intelligent form of life had an interest to spread out their own form of life. Why? Part of intelligence is curiosity. If you are not curious, you are not intelligent. There's automatically part of intelligence. So they wanted to find out, are we alone? Are there others? Are there other forms of life? So they want to spread out the universe. In the beginning, you don't use spaceships. That's much too complicated. They learn that the distances between the stars are much too high, measured in light years, so it makes no sense. In the beginning, they simply infect a part of their Milky Way with their own DNA. Just rub on your fingers, now you have millions of cells gone away. In every cell, you have your DNA. And DNA is resistant against heat, against cold, against everything. So you send billions and billions of your own DNA out into the universe. You know exactly the biggest part of this DNA will come into the gravity of a sun, will burn, destroyed. Another part of it will come to the gravity of planets which are completely wrong for it. For example, in our solar system, we have a planet like Mercury. Mercury is too hot. If DNA comes into Mercury, it burns out. Or a planet like Jupiter is too big. Its gravity would kill it immediately, and the atmospherical conditions are methane, ammoniac, etc. So it's nothing. So part of the DNA will land on planets which are similar than our planet Earth. Are there planets which are similar than ours? Until about 10 years ago, humans believed and science believed that Earth is unique in the universe. We have the right distance to the sun, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, etc. And we have water. In the meantime, NASA has declared that only in our Milky Way, not in the whole universe, just in our Milky Way, there are at least 4 billion of Earth-like planets. So some of the DNA, which they spread out, would reach Earth-like planets. And now evolution starts. And evolution has, as I said, unchangeable form. Evolution can bring out, as we have it on Earth, millions of forms of life. Beetles, crocodiles. But unchangeable forms means when you become intelligent, you have to have hands. For example, you have 2 eyes, and the 2 eyes always look in front. 2 eyes will not have, or 1 eye, it doesn't matter, or 3. It does not help you in the back. You have to see what you catch. Or you have arms and fingers. It doesn't matter if you have 1 or 5. They are always in front of you. You have to see what you catch. You have to run away, etc. Because Ezekiel wrote a lot of details which they had on a construction table for their planning to the moon and planning to later Mars. So Joe Blumrich reconstructed every detail according to the measurement of Ezekiel. And this was the outcome of it. That was Blumrich's NASA's reconstruction of Ezekiel. Ezekiel said that this whole thing on the top, you can see with the laser here, on the top there was something like a glittering thing, and inside was a chair. And on the chair was someone sitting looking like a human in glittering clothes. Well, the command in his spacesuit. And of course he's sitting, he has to have a view around everything. He describes the body of the thing, he describes the wings, which made this terrible noise. And he even clearly states, when the wings stood still, they were hanging down. When the noise started, when the wings started again, the wings went up. He even say, when the splendorness of the highest, he calls this whole thing the splendorness of the highest. When the wings started, the noise started, and when it lifted up from the earth, the wings, the wheels lifted up too. And then he describes the wheels. You know, in Ezekiel's times, they had a wheel which go forward and backward. But the wheel which he sees here on Ezekiel's vehicle could go forward, backward, right, and left at the same time without making any steering movement. When you are sitting in your car and you want to take a curve, so you steer, and the wheels make a steering movement. Ezekiel describes a wheel which goes forward, backward, right and left without any moving. So, and he is so astonished that he described this wheel 4 times. Now at NASA, they reconstructed the wheel of Ezekiel, and that was the outcome. They have the wheel and they separate the wheel into different segments. Now each segment has an own axis, and each axis can turn in both directions. So it's clear, with that kind of wheel, you can go forward, you can go backward. If you want to go in your direction, just the axis turns in your direction or away from you. And with that wheel, you can go without the curve, without making a curve, in right angle into every place. I mean, if you land on a strange planet, you probably don't have just a plane with grass where you can move in a curve. Maybe you have to move around right angle. This is what this wheel can, which Ezekiel describes. And the funny thing is, NASA has received the patent for that wheel. And that wheel today is used on Mars, on the Mars rover. But the whole idea comes out of the Bible, of the book of Ezekiel. Now Ezekiel describes every detail of the wheel, and the wheel was reconstructed. And then at the second part of the book from chapter 44, he says, the splendorness of the Lord arrived a second time, the splendorness of the high, a second time. And this time they took me up, they put me on a chair, and they brought me on a very, very high mountain. Read this in the Bible. He does not say, they brought me on a mountain. They brought me on a very, very high mountain in the Bible. He doesn't know where this mountain is, where they go. scholars, biblical scholars said, well, Ezekiel had a vision. He had a dream of a Jerusalem in the future. This is nonsense. Ezekiel grew up in Jerusalem. If they would have brought him to Jerusalem, he would describe, yes, they brought me to Jerusalem. It's not Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, there are no very, very high mountain. He was at some complete different place. He doesn't know where it is. And when they came to a landing, there is a big building. Ezekiel sits on the splendors of the highest, and the captain asked the human, Ezekiel, look down, human. What do you see? And Ezekiel says, there was something like a big village or a small city, and in the center of it was something like a temple. He does not say it was a temple, something like a temple. Ask yourself, what was the meaning of the word temple in antiquity? A place for the gods, a place for the extraterrestrials. Honor them, worship them, a place where they were living. So something like a temple. They came down and they make a landing inside the building which looks like a temple. They come to a standstill. Ezekiel goes out, and there comes a stranger in white glittering clothes and says to Ezekiel, oh humans, you humans, you have eyes to see, but you see nothing. You have ears to hear, but you hear nothing. And then the stranger gives Ezekiel a measuring device, whatever it is, something which you can measure. And the stranger says to Ezekiel, humans, now measure this whole building. Ezekiel, in the meantime, has clearly understood that this is not God. It's something different. So he has courage. He asked the stranger, he asked back, why should I measure this building? Why? And the stranger in white clothes said, that's why we brought you up here. Now Ezekiel starts to measure. Long, large, different steps, every detail. Read the Bible. Pages of measuring in Ezekiel. In the whole Bible, you find this amount of measuring devices, dates only in Ezekiel. Now, I just said NASA reconstructed the spaceship of Ezekiel in every detail. And then a German engineer came, his name is Hans Herbert Bayer, and he stumbled over these measurement dates at the book of Ezekiel. And he asked himself, is this reality, or was this just a dream, a vision of Ezekiel? He started to take Ezekiel's measurement for real and reconstructed and designed exactly the building. It all fits perfectly. No coincidence. You see? Now what can we do? Again, our translations in the past were made from a biblical standpoint, from a religious and psychological standpoint. Our professors at that time who translated Ezekiel were real famous beings, but they could not translate it the other way. In the meantime, we know what happened. Ezekiel sees the light up there with his captured people. They hear the noise. Some vehicle came down. Ezekiel, by profession, is a priest. He thinks in the beginning that this must be God, so he felt himself on the knees, and then he realized this is not God. Now he stands up and he starts to describe every details. The wings with their noise, the feet who were metallic, then of course the wheel which could go in every direction, forward, backward, right and left, without a steering movement. All this is handed down in the Bible, and in the meantime we can reconstruct it. He says, between the living creatures there was something glittering, like a fire. It was simply the cooler from the atomic reactor, because the energy comes from a little atomic reactor. We have these small atomic reactors too in our day. And he describes every detail. He's completely upside down when he sees the wheel. The wheel who could go in every direction without a steering movement.